I sure have. There are some differences, though, in our story, and in a lot of different coming out stories. What I think is really cool is that the people who have read my story so far, the one thing that I hear back from them time and time again is they always say, I didn't realize you were going through all of that. I didn't realize how long the process took. I didn't realize all the different layers you had to work through that went into making the decision you made. And I think sometimes it's really easy for people, you know, when they come out, especially when they come out later in life and they're like, oh, midlife crisis, congratulations. But it was anything but that as you read through the story and you see kind of the weight of it over the years and how long it took me to get comfortable with myself.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Align Your Stars podcast. I am your host, astrologer, transformation life coach, and energy healer, Lumi Pelinku. This week on the Align Your Stars podcast, we are going to be interviewing an author named Jillian Abby. The book is called Perfectly Queer, published by Hay House. Now, let me introduce you to her by reading what she's all about right now. Jillian Abby has mastered reinvention throughout her life to create the most powerful and satisfying journey. She left the comfort of her hometown of Buffalo, New York, to study abroad in Cochabamba, Bolivia at age 15. As an adult, her resume includes certified public accountant, licensed massage therapist, craft beer bar owner, creative copywriter, homeschooling parent, and black belt martial artist. Very versatile as a person with her expertise and definitely astrologically connected. We'll talk a bit more about that during this episode. I'll tell you her big three for now. She is an Aries Sun, Gemini rising, and Aquarius Moon. Now, her most recent role as a newly out lesbian and advocate for the LGBTQ plus community was by far her riskiest and most rewarding change. She serves as a committee member for Tampa's first inclusive homeschool prom at TB Hive and is a member of Tampa's LGBT Chamber of Commerce and Babe Crafted. Jillian lives in Tampa Bay with her partner Jen and their wildly wacky children, Sophie and Ollie, and a rescue cat named Poe. So while we're waiting, I want to draw a card just to set the mood as to what is going to be unfolding for this interview for now. And this may be a message for you too. So stick around in terms of listening to what this message means. So I'm using the usual Diana Cooper Ascension cards deck, and let's just see what the message is all about right now. And just relax into your space. Take a deep breath right now. In through the nose and out through the mouth. And we're going to see what the message is for today. Okay, we got Hilarion, number 46. It's combination 1. 1 stands for innovation, pioneering, taking a step, and as well as embracing the changes in your life. 1 is a leadership number, just so you know, numerology wise. Now I'm going to read you the message of this card. Hilarion is from Saturn and steps down his energy through the Temple of Truth over Crete. He is negotiator for Earth on the Council of Saturn and helps us remain connected to our spiritual journey. As master of the orange 5th ray of technology, science, truth, and knowledge, he invites you to open your mind so that he can drop seeds for new ideas into your consciousness. He assists those who are ready to become higher channels and clairvoyants. Your guidance is to sit quietly and ask him to help you be all that you can be. The affirmation for this card is, I open myself to the wisdom and guidance of Hilarion. So what this card indicates is, so why Saturn, right? If you are familiar with Saturn and its energy and what it's about, how could Saturn be often associated as discipline, structure, becoming very committed to what you set your mind to? How could that be a card for initiation and change? Well, sometimes it requires for us to let go of things that we feel like is outmoded in regards to our structures. Hilarion's purpose and as well as role in our lives is to help us remain focused and inspired with the idea of embracing change and then setting our course into reinitiating this new established structure with our plans. So in this case, He also assists you if ever you want to start taking a deep dive into understanding your clairvoyance, and as well as your ability of becoming more of a higher channel of receiving wisdom, receiving information for yourself. And it's not to suggest that you should become a psychic medium or astrologer, medium channeler, or anything like that. Everybody has the ability to become an intuitive because it's all embedded in us. We have the ability to channel information through a very receptive and neutral space. That's the key and clue in terms of us establishing this connection. And the reason why it is very crucial and essential to start establishing connection to self, and as well as becoming more of a channel with our higher self, is because we'll be able to navigate through challenges and obstacles of any kind, and as well as us understanding that it is safe to embrace the change, and as well as establishing a new system of order by our own view and vision. So Hilarian's message for you is that you could embrace the change, even though it may be hard to let go of something that was once perceived as security for you. As you learn to let go of the clutches of fear, and as well as the clutches of something that's already been crumbling around you, it's all about you becoming more aligned with your passions, becoming more aligned with the idea that you can find happiness in your journey. It's all about you taking that first step and trusting it. So Hilarian's message, and I'm going to repeat the affirmation again. I open myself to the wisdom and guidance of Hilarian. So that is our message for today while we wait for Jillian Abby. And I'm going to be inviting her into the room right now, and we will get started. Okay, so we have Jillian Abby here. Thank you so much for joining Align Your Stars podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm great. I'm so excited to be here. And I think I'm going to learn a lot.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Especially when I involve astrology with any people that I'm interviewing. It's so incredible how much of the parallels that you see. And you definitely will learn quite a bit. And also for the viewers and as well as listeners of this podcast, anybody who doesn't understand astrology, I like to break it down in the most comprehensive way possible, just so you can leave with some new information about what astrology can do and how it could benefit you in terms of working with it. So I already mentioned your big three. I'll mention it again, but you got the nice Aries Sun, Gemini rising, Aquarius Moon. My gosh, you're meant to be a way shower, somebody who's a conduit of a lot of information, meant to spread an awareness to the world. And Aries, the sun, I mean, my God, my lady, you're meant to be really paving and blazing your way through in terms of initiating changes in your life through courage. But for all those who don't know you or haven't read your book yet, Perfectly Queer, would you like to introduce yourself and tell them about yourself and how you got to this point in your life's work?
I would love to. So I have kind of an unconventional path. And for the longest time in my life, I couldn't find my purpose. I couldn't find my passion. Everyone else seemed to talk about their passion and purpose. And I felt like I was always lost. So professionally, I started as a certified public accountant. Then I switched to becoming a licensed massage therapist. Then I became a homeschooling mom and opened a craft beer bar. And at 38 years old, in a craniosacral therapy session, which is a type of somato-emotional bodywork, I came out to myself as a lesbian. And it was a point in my life where I could finally love and accept that piece of me. The book goes into a lot more detail about everything leading up to that, the journey to it. But it was finally the point in my life where I felt like I was living in integrity. I was living the way I was created to be. And that is really when the magic started happening. And so since then, although it was hard coming out, and again, the book gets all into the dirty, difficult details of that. But through that, I was able to launch my dream business as a writer. And I released my first ever book with Hay House Publishing called Perfectly Queer.
Oh, congratulations. That's wonderful. When was it released, your book?
April 25th of this year.
Oh, so very nice. It's a little baby.
It is. It's my book baby. It is. And it is just making its way around the world. And I love hearing from people that have shared with me that they finally see themselves through my story.
Oh my God.
Yeah, which is really powerful. And then also they can pass it on to their friends and family members to help start important conversations that need to happen. So it's like an honor and a dream. And I still pinch myself that how is this my life?
Oh, I love that. And I also see like how you have so many skills, the jack of all trades. I mean, an accountant, and then you became a massage therapist. And
Yeah.
then like, oh my gosh. I mean, it's definitely fitting because I see in your birth chart, like you have this beautiful position. It's called the North Node. We all have this on our birth charts, which is an indicator of something that we are heading to in our life's path.
Okay.
So in your case, the North Node is like the dharmic path, the place in our lives where it's like uncharted territory, where we're most uncomfortable. And, you know, you're going through like lots of shifts and everything. And as you are like adjusting into the changes and embracing that through picking up so many different skills, that's what leads you to your moment in terms of solidifying all these skill sets into one product. So in your case, where it's positioned, that North Node's in your third house of the mind, the mental processes, the skills. And I like to also like note that the third house is very much like the adolescent phase of what we all experience, but it's the constant thing that we are experiencing because we're never fully grown. We're always constantly on the path of growing. And in your case, where the North Node's position there, like you're always changing your skills, but it just like weaved you into where you are, where you're standing right now, basically. Do you want to say something?
That is so fascinating. I wish I would have met you, a decade and a half ago when I was going, why do I keep switching to these unusual things? But I feel so drawn to sometimes such opposing areas that have all now come together in like a beautiful explanation of why I took such a twisting and turning path.
Yeah.
It's also funny too, what you mentioned about innovation and creating new ways of doing things.
Yeah.
Because I find that all the time in my life. And at the same time, I'm like, okay, so where's the resting point? When do I get to rest at all? But maybe that's in the next life.
Gosh, you got so much fire and air in your chart. I mean, it's hard for you to sit still because there's so much ideas generating in your mind, but that's what creates the brilliance in your journey. It's about accepting the ability of you alchemizing certain ideas and thought forms into something else. Like that's the path of an Aquarius moon for sure, like in terms of the emotional context. And it's not to say that you are in any way like robotic or seeing things as only factual. In fact, you have a lot more of emotions stored within your subconscious. It just takes a lot of time for you to understand where it's coming from. But once you dig in deep, that's when you step into this state of self-acceptance and beauty in your life. And it's very fitting because your moon's also conjunct your south node, which is the opposite point of that north node I was mentioning before.
Okay.
So that moon conjunct south node is just like in the position of the ninth house. You have so much ancient wisdom in you and intuition. I don't know if you felt that way in your life or you felt like an inner knowing. Go ahead. You can explain like how you see like or how you perceive the world around you.
Yeah, well, I hope this is encouraging for some people out there who maybe don't hear that intuitive voice, because I didn't for most of my life.
Yeah.
And I actually bought books on intuition and your subconscious mind. And I was like, why don't I have that inner voice? Why is everything, I can feel it coming from my brain and not my gut or not my heart or soul? And so I tried in almost a very mechanical sense of like, I will study this, I'll be the intuition student. And it wasn't again until that voice started coming up in a very quiet way. And I realized that when I ignored it, it stayed quiet. And when I paid attention to it and I listened to it, the voice would get stronger and stronger. And so actually now, one of my greatest strengths, I think, in the writing that I do, and I work with a lot of corporate clients actually, is that they point out that I'm very intuitive in how I write and what their people need to hear and how to synthesize. I love that you mentioned alchemy, because I call myself a professional dot to dot connector of how all the pieces relate. But that's the Jill of today. And that wasn't me even 5 years ago. Like, this has been a process of really slowing down and getting to know myself so that these gifts or whatever you would call them have been able to come out and surface. And so it's just amazing too, how we can change and how we can grow into the person that we're meant to be
Mm-hmm.
through really consciously trying to tap into that intuition and pay attention to it and listen. And that usually means making hard choices too.
Absolutely. And you probably felt like your body changed a lot too when you started aligning more with the truthful component as opposed to the resistance, because the body feels everything. And like whenever it is resisting a certain part of you, it in fact creates like, it's like kind of like a cloud of like real thick. It feels very thick and very sluggish,
Yes.
and just like, oh, what's going on here? Like something definitely needs to be cleared in terms of the debris. And therefore, when you tapped into that, going back to the cranial sacral massage,
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about that a little bit. What was going through your mind even before the cranial sacral massage? When, like, what propelled you to actually do it in the first place? Because it does invoke um, awakening moments. Like sometimes even Kundalini happens, or like because of the mind, because the head's like basically like the crown chakra, for instance. That's like the area in our lives where we receive
Right.
the higher truth of
Yeah.
awareness. But what propelled you to do it in the first place?
Well, so I started receiving craniosacral therapy back when I was pregnant with my first child, my daughter, 13 years ago. And I was fascinated by it. Again, coming from a very analytical CPA brain, newly into massage therapy, when I heard about craniosacral therapy, I really couldn't wrap my brain around how it would work, if it would work, but I was desperate for relief as a newly pregnant woman. And so I gave it a try, and I found it to be interesting. And so
Mm-hmm.
I've continued with craniosacral therapy for years. I actually am a craniosacral therapy practitioner myself now because I fell in love with the work so much. But the interesting thing is that prior to the session 4 years ago, where I came out to myself, I had another session 6 years prior to that, where I also came out.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting thing is the practitioners were working on the same part of my body. I had no intention of revealing anything about my sexual identity
Mm-hmm.
on either of those sessions. The difference between the first and second session is that in the first session, I wasn't entirely sure that I was in a safe space to share.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the book, I talk about how I kind of gave a half truth where I said, yes, I'm queer, but I'm also obviously very clearly in love and attracted to my husband, because I didn't want to give up my marriage at that point. We had a great relationship. And so I offered up a half truth. And unfortunately, it wasn't, I don't know what kind of words to put around it, except it wasn't met with acceptance.
Right.
Um, and so I kind of buried that piece of me. The other reason why the book is called Perfectly Queer is because I'm a perfectionist. And so the therapist encouraged me to work harder on my marriage, perfectionist mode engaged, worked harder on marriage. It wasn't until later in that second craniosacral therapy where I felt safe and I actually verbalized the full truth because I felt safe to do so, that's what came up. And it was a huge release. I mean, I talk in the book, it was like 99 angels descended from the sky playing all their musical instruments. It was an amazing moment. It's probably the first moment I can think of in my life where I truly felt unconditional self-love.
Mm-hmm.
And then I sat up from the table, and then reality set back in that I had a husband at home, I had kids at home, I homeschooled, we ran a small business together. So that beautiful moment of alignment and feeling finally whole in my body was now in opposition to my reality and the fact that I would have to make changes if I wanted to continue to be this whole person. And as you were saying, where there the dark cloud, that's really
Mm-hmm.
where the dark cloud set in. Because
Yeah.
then who you are and who you're putting yourself out there as aren't in the same space, and life got really hard. And it started as a mental toll, and it escalated into a physical toll until I ended up in urgent care because
Wow.
I couldn't carry the weight of the secret any longer. And that's what propelled me to come out to my husband at the time.
Mm.
So the process is not easy. And at the same time, um, I wouldn't have changed it because there's nothing in this world I've ever felt that feels better than just living in truth.
Yeah.
I did not realize, I'd seen all the memes, I heard all the words, but until you are living in it, and then you see how many opportunities and skills and talents and people and opportunities come into your life, it's really mind-blowing.
Yeah, your reality becomes a lot more colorful.
Yes.
Because the murkiness that we all experience is whenever we are living a template that somebody else has set out for you,
Yeah.
or society, for conformity and all those things. And it's so incredible that you found it during 38 years old. So that was the time. So I'm talking about your nodes again.
Yes.
That is called the reverse nodal return. So it happens every 24 years.
Oh.
So yes. And around the age of, not 24 years, I'm sorry about that. Every 18 years, that's what happens. So like around 36 to 38 years old, the nodal returns happen again. So something was coming to complete circle of an awareness of how you are meant to set out in your path. And you either meet somebody very substantial in terms of your growth, or you find your purpose. You find your inner truth. You live out that truth, even though it might be a little hard because it's in a way like the soul's rite of passage, the reverse nodal return when it occurs. But then once it does, and you live it out and really become more open and receptive to incredible experiences, a lot of incredible people come into your life. A lot of amazing experiences unfold, and therefore the life around you becomes a lot more vibrant. It's so interesting because my husband went around the 38 years old, and that's when he met me. And this was like it's a very karmic relationship, and in a good way. It's just like lots of lessons unfolded for us too, but it was more about healing family trauma on my end. So he definitely activated that within me. And I'm sure, like, in terms of your journey, when the reverse nodal return happened, perhaps in your immediate surroundings with your family, it might have been very difficult, I'm sure. But your kids definitely noted something. I'm sure they have. And they've been up to the truth. Yeah. So how was their like how did it happen for them? Like basically, like, not happen for them, but how did they react? Or if you don't mind me asking this question, react, or as well as like, what was their response to you, like when you finally came out?
So at the time they were 6 and 9 years old, and we've always had a wonderful and wacky relationship, especially with homeschooling. We were always together. And so when my then husband and I decided that divorce was our best option for us, we wanted to sit down together with the kids and have a discussion. And we decided to tell them the reason for our divorce. And because I didn't want them to think that our marriage was somehow based on that there was a lack of love there, that they had done anything, that anyone had really done anything wrong. It wasn't really that situation. So when I explained to them that I was a lesbian, and I asked if they knew what that meant, and my son, who was 6 at the time, said, "What's a Lego bin?" And I said, "No, this has nothing to do with Legos. I wish it did. That would be easier." But I just, I explained to them the different types of love we feel for people in different ways. And it was a very simple conversation, and they got it, because a lot of people like to make it like the LGBTQ community is something sexual. And at the end of the day, it's about love. Yes. And people understand love from in utero. So explaining that to children at any age isn't challenging. And now I was so lucky. And again, it was one of a total serendipitous meeting with my fiance now, Jen. And my son has said that she's like the missing piece of our family. And he's so excited that he finally has someone in his family who gets him. So
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
He probably knows her. You know,
He has. He actually just said the other day that
he knows her.
he believes that Jen and I have many lifetimes together, whether that was friendships or relationships, but we've always been connected. And that he knew that. So when he chose me as a mom, he knew he would eventually get her too. And I said, son, where is all this coming from? He's 10 now, but I love, he has such interesting, like amazing
He has an
thoughts
inner
and knowledge.
knowing.
He does.
Yes, there's an inner knowing in him, and all kids have it.
Yeah.
Kids start to like let it go usually between the ages of 7 and 14. So in your case, because you are very much open to letting them express themselves, that's why the gifts are still immersed.
I love it.
Yeah, and when you question them, like, or it can still like any forms of judgment and linear thinking, that's when they shut down the gifts. That's what happens to all of us. Like even when we were children, you probably said things to your parents that were really outrageous in their eyes because they don't see it as something as normal in their terms. But that's when usually we shut it down altogether, and therefore we have to recover those pieces. And that's why it led you to wanting to learn intuitive development, like because there was a missing part of you.
Right.
But you always had it. It was just resting.
Yeah.
We all go through that. And I've gone through it myself as well when I was 7, like completely shut off my gifts. I was able to see auras. Every person that I met, I was saying like, you're this colors. They're like, what are you talking about? Yeah. And then like my father's like, we don't see colors around people. What do you mean? I'm like, what? Like it just like turned it off. Of course, I love my dad. I'm very close to him, but also Aries, like you. But he didn't understand at the time because that's that's the culture that we were growing up in. And coming back to the focus of retrieving that part of us, it's always in us, but it's just all about really letting go and allowing the messages to flow through us. But you have on your chart so much love themes. Like I mean, I see Venus in alignment with your sun. I also have Mars. You also have Mars in alignment with your sun. So it's called a conjunction. Venus is in Aries as well as Mars. So your Venus expression, it's about becoming the trailblazer of honoring love in as many forms, not really embedding yourself into the confines of other people's expectations of love. You're the pursuer. You're the pursuer, but as well as the torchbearer of what love can be. And it's in the 11th house of networks. So in your case of of sharing with people, yeah, definitely no coincidence here. Like you have so much activity in the 11th house, like you going out and about, talking about your purpose, talking about your lessons, and as well as experiences, it empowers people.
Can I tell you something kind of interesting that I'm getting all like
any parallels here? Yes, please. Yes.
Well, I've started writing my next book and it's about love, and it is just sharing the message of love, but in a way that we're not used to hearing it or thinking about it. Because I hope everyone can find more love in their life. I think that really is why we're here. Yeah,
because we are all love. Love is the universal language because we all get it. Love and fear. I don't like the fear. It's definitely not something I like want us to like tap into, but love is like, it pretty much overpowers all in a good way. It transmutes and alchemizes. It's such an incredible conduit of healing. And I'm not surprised at all that you're tapping into that part of your life right now. Because even transit wise, like with what's happening right now in the skies, astrologically, I mean, for all the listeners here who are listening to this podcast, your astrology buffs. So right now, the nodes, I mentioned to you about your nodes before. It's the Leo and Aquarius axis. A couple of years back might have been a little hard for you. Not a couple of years, I'm sorry. 2018. That was the hard time in your life where you really had to tap into your truth, stepping forward in truth. Now, fast forwarding in time to 2021 to 2022, probably was the completion of your book. Correct?
Yes. And my divorce.
And your divorce. Yeah, that's another hard, it's like a hard like rite of passage, but like, you know, it's just a new phase that you're entering in your life experience. Now, this third phase happening, the nodes are entering the cardinal signs of Libra and Aries. So North Node is going to be going over all those planets in your 11th house. So this is all about like retrieving all this information, new information about what you want to share with the world. But you have so much power and momentum to do it. It's a year and a half range for you. That's the next cycle.
Whew. All right. I need to get
Yes.
busy then.
I love it. And there's no rush. Of course, it's just new
Yeah.
information and becoming more receptive and just listening to what people have to say in terms of feedback, not about your work per se, but feedback in terms of what they're experiencing. So I would suggest, this is like an astrology consult, we'll move forward to the interview, but I would suggest like you interviewing people, all the walks of life, like a field agent.
I love it.
Yes. If you want to like get some perspective on love languages or a newly developed system.
You know, it's been on my to-do list as I've tried writing this book. I'm like, I think I'm going to have to consult on this too, in several different areas. And also because I want to show love in a lot of different perspectives and ways. I think that's really important, and not just my view of here's how love worked for me. So I think that's great. I love
Astrology
this.
can't lie. I'm telling you, astrology is quite figurative and literal at the same time, but there's like some intuition that comes through and you already had it in you. It's like you were feeling already that your Venus expression. So it's just so beautiful. And I would love to know, can you share a pivotal moment that ignited your passion for writing and set you onto this cosmic storytelling path? Like, what propelled you into stepping into that space, into writing about this?
I have always loved writing. In fact, I wanted to be an author from a young age. And I remember one of my parents telling me, well, that's not a real job. So I kind of put that dream on the back burner. And it wasn't until I was in the lower points of my life, as I was trying to navigate through divorce, navigate through coming out, what my children's education would be, what my future income would be, because I had to step away from the business that we ran together. There was a lot. My life was changing in every single aspect. And on Facebook, this spiritual women's group popped up, which I've never had much of a religious background. I thought anyone who called themselves spiritual, that was just their way of getting out of going to church. I've since changed my perception on that. But this spiritual women's group popped up and it was all online. And for some reason, I just felt really drawn to it. And so when I joined, I spoke to the woman who ran it and I said, I don't know why, I just felt really drawn to this. And I see you're in Florida. Maybe, maybe we could meet sometime. And she said, we've already met 3 times before. Apparently our paths had crossed at different types of events that I worked through my business, and in other ways. And so she just kept coming back into my life in different ways. And so I was really excited then to be a part of this group. And within that group, there was a writer subgroup. I started writing as therapy for myself. And I shared it with that group because it felt good to validate my own lived experience. All of the women were heterosexual women, so I thought they had no interest at all in my coming out story, and they all could find pieces of their own life through the story, and they said, we want to hear more. And so they really were the foundation and support system that encouraged me to keep going, and I'm so grateful for them, because otherwise I don't know if I would have put this story out there. I didn't know that it could have value to anyone else besides myself. And now I'm getting to see really how far the reach is and how it is touching people in different ways. So
yeah, it shouldn't only be confined to a specific group. I mean, anybody can read this book.
Right.
It's all about really stepping forward in truth, whether you be in a relationship that's not serving you anymore, or being in a state of mind that's not really serving you for your highest and greatest good, and so forth. It can go out and trail into many different directions. And I'm sure anybody could resonate in terms of the message of this book. So I'm happy that you found your therapy was able to be alchemized into something that will heal another person too.
Yeah, the tagline on the book is facing big fears, living hard truths, and loving myself fully out of the closet. And if you took off the out of the closet piece, again, that's where it kind of we all have big fears to face and hard truths. And we're all on this self-love journey or process that we're going through. Yeah,
I completely agree. My God, that's really, really beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
So perfectly queer, not just for the gays. Just want to put that out there.
Exactly. And I wanted to emphasize that because I even saw one of your reels before we started talking here. Like somebody wrote or somebody told you that
yes,
she had the book on her kitchen table, and then somebody's like, is there something you want to tell me?
right.
Like, what's wrong with you? Like, come on, it's
I know. It's probably the most common thing that I hear from people of, oh, my sister and her partner love your book. But I haven't read it because I'm not gay. And I'm like,
oh my goodness.
Can you imagine if we could only read the stories of people who are exactly like us? We would miss out on so much. So
Absolutely. We all have something to teach others.
yeah.
know? And in this case, this is self-love and self-empowerment. So anybody can benefit from this. I love that. It's really beautiful. So what's the thing in your business or successful venture that you didn't expect now in terms of development of this book and as well as leading to the publishing of this book? Like, what did you not expect?
I did not expect the opportunities and pathways that would open and the people that I would meet. My book made Good Morning America's list of 15 spring reads. That was not at all on my radar. And it's funny because the day before, my life coach actually yelled at me for not pushing hard enough on the publication. And I said, I'm an introvert. This is actually really hard for me to keep putting myself out there. I said, I'm going to hand this one over to the universe. And she said, no, I need you to reach out to Good Morning America or someone, you need to be on TV. The next day I get off a plane in Pennsylvania. I check my Instagram and I'm tagged in a post from Good Morning America that I've made their list. And it happened through a podcast connection. I mean, yeah, there's been so many interesting and amazing things along the way, talking to different high school groups and just being able to connect with teens who are really scared right now, young adults who are very scared right now, especially here in Florida. And then even opportunities. I mean, the clients I write for, I started writing just as from a business sense, just kind of by accident. A kombucha company reached out to me and said, we need help with a label. And I said, well, I don't do this, but if you like it, pay me. And if you don't like it, don't pay me. I think I charged them $30 for it. And now it's on bottles across the country. I mean, we're talking, like a decade later. So
totally
that's where
North known the third. Totally North known the third. I'm telling you, like, you give yourself so little credit sometimes. Like, you have so much power into the pen, like, in terms of the messages. I'm sorry, keep going. What you want to say.
No, that's really interesting. And really, from the self-love piece is also growing the self-worth piece. And I've realized how often I've sold myself short or that I've played it small when that's going counter to what my purpose is here on earth to do and to get this message out. And so it is a struggle for me to keep pushing forward because, my insides just want to hide sometimes, but it's been great. And the people I write for now, I mean, I write for 2 multinational corporations and help them add more humanity and storytelling to their leaders' stories so that there is more human connection and it's not the very robotic, mechanical communications that we've had in corporations in the past.
Yeah, you're very poetic with the way you write. Very illustrative and beautiful, like the eloquence of the writing style. Like I'm going to go to the astrology to tie it in. Like, you have that nice Mercury in Pisces. I'm not saying that because I have the same position as you, but like it's the same. Actually, you're 17 degrees, I'm 16 degrees within 1 degree orb. That's amazing. Okay. It's definitely not like a coincidence at all. But anyway, with the Mercury in Pisces, it's oftentimes seen as detrimental, like in the astrology standards, because it's not really, because Mercury likes information. It likes facts, linear, making sense of things. Whereas Pisces is more about, let's break the norm. Let's like invite in like some fluid language that is universal to all. And that could be through like poetry. It could be through, metaphors. It could be through I'm sure you put a lot of metaphors in your
I love me a metaphor. Oh my gosh.
Like, you were very good at analogies, I'm sure, in high school or something like that. Like, it's just something that's very, like, you like the vision, like the visuals and it just has to have a deeper meaning as opposed to what just makes sense on text or paper. Like there has to be more layers to it, into it. So in terms of where Mercury's positioned, that's your ruler planet of the chart. It's the one planet that you work with throughout your life. So you were meant to write, you're meant to make impact in some way. Where it's positioned, the chart also is the 10th house. So that's the house of career and public, like your public self. So even though it's an introvert, you are an introvert at times. However, the writing that you do present to the world is impactful. It's readily received. It could be. It's all about really instilling that inner belief, instilling that inner power and confidence within yourself, you know, and it's through the service.
That's very cool. I mean, I feel more confident already. I'm like, it's written in the stars, Jill. Just go for it.
That's the power of astrology and what it could do. And like, of course, there's many other modalities that could work in. Like we could work with human design, we could work with Vedic astrology. It's all about you finding the clues, and as well as like basically like the ties of what makes sense. And it's all about like how you work with the planets, how you actively work with it, and as well as basically make peace with it if ever you have challenges in your life and things. I mean, you're meant to really, that Mercury placement, I'm telling you, that's one part that you work with mostly. And you have so many planets in the 6th house, which is the house of like daily rituals, daily routines, who you're meeting in everyday life. I always work with shadow goddesses, like the asteroid goddesses, and as well as the shadow work that we all experience. You have this position, the 6th house is named Lilith. I don't know if you heard of Lilith before in the biblical text. She was like the first wife of Adam. She's the one who rebelled. She's the one who like just decided to like skip out town and to not like submit to a man. She's like, I'm out of here. So your Mercury and Lilith make a beautiful trine with each other. They're communicating in a positive way. So they're both water signs. The Scorpio Lilith. I also have Lilith and Scorpio. So again, there's no coincidence that we connected here. So the way Mercury is working with Lilith, it's about basically, you know, honoring the dark part of us, but also transmuting it to light, bringing forth some kind of message of reassurance whenever we are in the darkest moments of our lives. How do we basically bring light to it and as well as heal from it? And that's Lilith expression. So that's probably a reflection of your next book as well.
Yeah. I was going to say that there's so much in this one. And yeah, I can see that tying in perfectly to the next story as well. And I've got goosebumps all over because this is just so wild to me. And now I'm like, I need to learn more.
Isn't it? Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like how this all works. And it's just the 6th house. It's like, it's the energy that you're working with every day. Where your Lilith is positioned there is also an indicator that, yeah, you could work with people, but you also have to challenge authority. If somebody's telling you what to do, it's time for you to step up and really own the space that you're in.
I was going to say, did you overhear the phone call I just had with my boss earlier this week? I guess.
No. But that's
it's aligned. We'll just say that much. It's aligned.
For sure. So now going back into your journey and everything, like did anybody in your life like have like influence on you in terms of like, you know, the most powerful influence in you, in your perception of the world around you? Like who had the most influence in your life?
It's interesting that you mentioned that because I feel like along the journey, every few years, I'll meet what I'll call a pivot person in my life who really kind of shifts my thinking on things. But if I had to go back to one person overarching in everything, I mean, my mom was a huge and is a huge influence in my life, but in very different ways along the path. And so even in the story, it's the growth and then the disintegration and then the rebuilding of our relationship and kind of how we challenge each other and what we learned from each other. You know, while there's things that I can't go into detail here, her in my life and her finally opening up and sharing more of her story and what her childhood was like and her relationships were like, it gave me a lot of illumination into perspective on my own path. But yeah, and then I've met other people that, you know, part of getting on a more of a spiritual path was meeting Agnieszka, who is my craniosacral therapist. And I don't think she's from this planet. She practically glows. I'm not sure that she walks. I think she just floats. But she's really opened my mind up more so than anyone else to the fact that there are so many unlimited possibilities. And sometimes it's just the letting go and allowing things to unravel and unfold, that's when the most incredible things can occur, as opposed to me trying to always put it in a box and this is the way it should be.
Yeah.
She has always been there to remind me to just open up, always come from a place of love and see what happens.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Yeah. And it's just like, that's the one thing that we all are so challenged with. Like, we always think that, like, we're always scared of the unknown, of course, for one, but we also have a feeling as to what could be as we let go. And when we're holding on, like, and to things and situations to dear life, that's only creating more decay in our life experience. It's not thriving. And in fact, it becomes like a swamp region. That's how I usually see it. Like, whenever we have control issues, you're probably like, yes, it's visual.
Yes.
It's like a swamp. It's like, there's no air. There's no oxygen in the water. Of course, it's like, because the water's not moving, but we really have to clear out the way in order for the water to circulate and therefore bring more vitality in our life. And that's the same in terms of our energy. Because if our energy is blocked, and I go into chakra work usually, like whenever I'm talking on this podcast, I talk about chakras all the time and energy healing and all those things. I'm an energy healer as well. So whenever we are blocked by the fear, I was talking about fear before, blocked by this feeling of the fear of the unknown and all those things, that's what could lead to like a backlog of our creative processes, and as well as our own true gifts. It takes much longer for us to realize it. And as well as our purpose, like a lot of things basically backtrack. And it's good that you had people like that in your life, where your mom was more of like the intense, like somebody that you really had to patch things up and heal from, in reflection of your book. And as well as Anushka, she's the one who's basically like helping you step into your dharmic path. Whereas your mom was more about the past, about healing that and reflecting back in terms of her relationships with life, relationships with others, and therefore patched a lot of things in terms of your understanding of how you're generating. I love that. Love.
I love that you mentioned creativity too, because I just have to say that my creativity has soared since going through this process and since letting go. I mean, this book was written so fast and it felt like it came to me in divine downloads. I would wake up at 6 a.m, open my laptop, get the idea, type it out, close the laptop, and go on with my day. And so I know that's frustrating to some writers, because writing can be a very challenging and laborious process. But this just flowed. It was pure.
Because you're open. Everything is open and balanced. And of course, our chakras are not all optimal 24/7. Of course, we'll go through certain things, but the main ones that were affected by you, and as well as the experiences you've experienced that you went through before, it was optimally moving. And therefore, that's when the creative flow was happening. And the one thing that like really drives me crazy also is when people say like, I have no creative bone in my body. I'm like, yes, you do. Everybody's creative, guys. Like, it's all about really learning how to transmute one thought to the next. That's creativity. If you're making something with your hands, like food or cooking or anything like that, that's also creativity. It's just like, it's not limited to only what we write, what we create online or picture or anything. It's like, we're all creative beings naturally.
And it's about giving ourselves the space to play too. It's funny to me that a lot of people, when they're trying to write creatively, will sit down and they'll have their notebook or they'll have their laptop and they're like, okay, time to be creative. And then they wonder why there's no flow. And sometimes people have different creative hours that they need to work in. So maybe finding the time where you are feeling most alive and clear, and you can just let the ideas come to you. But I've done some classes in creativity for business women in particular who feel like they're kind of stuck with their ideas. And I said, we're all creative beings. It's just waking it up again.
And letting go of the expectation. Just let it flow. You're like very good at automatic writing, I'm sure.
It happens easily.
Yes.
I'll
Yeah,
say
because
that.
you have that overabundance of air energy in your chart. So that's automatic writing skill. And also
Oh,
claircognizance. The claircognizance is just like quick thoughts. It's just like
yeah.
lightning speed. Yeah, I know. And then the imagery flows through in the end. You're like, okay, I see
Yeah.
this story now.
Yeah.
So we all have, intuitive abilities. It all depends on our strength. In your case, I think it begins by you automatically writing, just letting the channel of energy flow through you. And then the lightning speed thoughts come through in terms of solidifying. And then it seals the deal with the imagery. And it can go simultaneously. Like other people could be creativity and then going into different avenues of other intuitive ability. So it all takes you have to trust. You have to trust in the process. And this is also in relation to decisions we make in our life too. That was really beautiful that you said that about the creativity. I loved. So at this point now in your life, like what is your proudest accomplishment? Besides, I mean, I'm sure the book is one.
Yeah. What's coming through right now is I'm proud of the ability to step outside of social norms or the stories that I was told about myself.
Uh-huh.
Because I didn't realize how hard that was too, and how many layers we have put upon us of ways that we're told who we are. And so while I'm not entirely completely there, I'm really proud that somehow I ended up on this path and that I've been able to go through this journey and share it with other people. Yeah, because it's hard when you're in a conversation with somebody and you know that they don't feel like they can be themselves. I don't think there's anything that breaks my heart more is to be with someone who is putting on the act that they feel like they need to have. And you talked about fear before, and I mentioned that fear was actually a major driver for me too. The number, Bronnie Ware's book, The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, the number one regret is I wish I lived a life that was more true to me and not what other people expected of me.
Yeah.
And it was that fear that kept playing over and over in my mind that I had to decide, am I willing to go to my deathbed knowing that I lived the life that everyone else wanted for me? But that means giving up the easy-ish, comfortable,
The template.
the template of life that I'm going through right now.
Template. Yeah.
Exactly.
I like to see it that way. It's just like,
yeah.
I feel like a lot of people were like living a script.
Yes.
And of course, I'm going back to 2020, the doomed year, but like it led to incredible power for everybody to wake up to the realization that they were living a template.
Yes.
Like they were living a script that was set on. I'm not going to go controversial or anything like that, but like it was just like basically we were living another person's reality of what's considered normal or expectation. And really, it's all about us living into the joyful path of what we create as our own. So I'm sure like with your book, people will find incredible antidotes in terms of them finding the way out of being brave into living and stepping in that joy.
And if nothing else, there's some really wacky humor in there too.
I love that. No, I love that as well. Like I love books that are like actually very personable and really does help you become like you're human. Like we're all human, and expressing your true self and vulnerability. It's so healing for other people to receive as well, because they feel like they're not the only ones feeling certain things,
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So the final question is, I love to ask all my guests is what helps you find self-acceptance and empowerment?
Wow, that is a great question. I feel like I should have nailed this answer by now with, the topic of my book and everything.
Yeah.
I think for me, it is helpful to play with when I share bits of truth about myself and to see how things open up and unfold. And then even looking back in retrospect of like, when you did this, this is what happened. And when you did this, this happened. I think that really helps me get over the fear of every time I need to step into the next phase of myself. And it's scary to do so. It's scary to take on another new form. But if I look back at how much good has come out of every single time that I have taken the leap or, broken the mold, and the good that's come out of that, it motivates me that, okay, Jill, you can do this again.
Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah. And it's all about really honoring those choices you make, regardless, even looking back to choices that you've already took. And it was meant to help you step into where you stand now.
Right.
Regardless. So that's such a beautiful answer. I love it. So could you let the listeners know where they could find you and where they can find your book as well?
Absolutely. Well, the book is available worldwide on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or you can contact your local independent bookstore, which I highly recommend. If they don't have it on the shelf, they can order it for you. It's available in paperback, ebook, and audiobook. So if you're not tired of my voice, I can read it. I can read it to you. You can also find me at my website, queerabby.com, on TikTok at AskQueerAbby, or Instagram at Jillian Abby Author.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jillian, for joining us and sharing your story. It was so beautiful, and you're such a wonderful joy, and oh my God, there's so much beauty coming out of you, like so fluffy and sweet. I love. Okay. Thank you so much for joining me today, and as well as listening to Align Your Stars podcast, and I will see you soon next time, and be well.